You're hanging out after hours with Matt Anderson, presented by Inside the Gamecocks.
Welcome into the Late Night Gamecock Show. So happy to have everyone here tonight. Obviously, big news is happening all around South Carolina athletics, but more than anything, I'm happy to have Alex Jones here tonight. Alex, I know you're a busy man. How are things going?
Things are going great. Pretty busy here for all of Gamecock athletics here, from the weekend to recruiting to baseball news and all of the sports news. So it's been a pretty busy weekend here.
Yeah, I can't imagine having to cover, really 4 new coaching hires, but 3 just today. And the news is all kind of broke at the exact same time. Obviously, everyone's really excited about the baseball hire. We're going to get into that. But softball hire is pretty exciting as well, and so is golf. But with that being said, I'm really excited to get to see you, not tomorrow, but Thursday. I'm going to go work my very first Shane Beamer football camp with Alex. Alex, what should I expect? I've never done this before.
First of all, it's going to be hot. That's one thing you should be expecting when we go outside. But it's always fun to be out there, kind of hang around, especially these 7-on-7 camps. You get to see a lot of different high schools around the state, and really even from kind of around the Southeast. Teams will travel to these things, get to see some guys who, Carolina's really interested in, get to lay some eyes on them. And then even on the O-line, D-line side, is going to be already expecting some pretty big names to come in for those too. So it should be pretty fun.
Well, I was kind of wondering, Alex, like with the O-line, D-line, are these guys in pads?
No, they're not. They'll have helmets on them, and they'll do some one-on-one stuff, but they won't be full padded.
Okay.
But they'll still go right at it. Yeah.
We're going to see some like 6'5" like behemoths out there. Like, there's going to be some big dudes. We're going to have to stand on our tiptoes around these kids.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Some of these guys, I know, like guy like Desmond Green, who's a pretty high-profile recruit in the state, coming in. I know I can't remember exactly what date he is, but he's one guy, just one of these many guys for these O-line, D-line camps that I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, I absolutely can't wait. And tonight on the show, obviously, we have so much to talk about. We're going to talk about the 3 new coaches. Obviously, we're going to spend a little bit more time on the men's baseball coach. With men's baseball at South Carolina, I guess I should just say baseball. There's no men's softball yet. But with baseball, it really is the biggest news in Gamecock sports right now. We're going to make sure we talk about that, but we also want to make sure we give love to the other sports. We're going to have a look back to look forward. This recruiting class, and normally this time of year, it would be all recruiting all the time. But with 3 new coaching hires, things get a little bit hectic for guys like Alex. I just get to sit here like y'all and read the news when it comes on the Big Spur. It's a lot easier to be in my position than Alex, John, Hale, JC, all those guys. But we're going to talk about what is this recruiting class looking for? About how big are we thinking this class can get? What are the current needs, size, all of that. And then we're going to look at some past official visits. I know that, Alex, your phone's probably been buzzing. Everybody that knows you from college or knows you from high school or is a Gamecock fan that has your cell phone number has probably been asking you, who are the welcome homes? And we can't give that away on this show. We're never going to spoil a kid's moment. But at the same time, I think there is some excitement brewing around the welcome homes, and there should be. And then we're going to preview these official visits coming up, maybe take a look back at past official visits and where the Gamecocks might stand. And we will have plenty of episodes to preview a class, project stuff, think about, okay, South Carolina might need X amount of quarterbacks, X amount of running backs, X amount of wide receivers, all the way down to the kickers. I don't know if the Gamecocks are going to take a kicker this class, but if they do, we'll talk about it. But we got all summer for that, and these official visits are really just kicking off. And then lastly, all of these camps, and I know, Alex, you've been to a bunch of them recently, and there's a bunch more. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know how Shane and the staff and you guys do this. It seems like there's a camp every other day. And
3 straight this week.
3 straight this week.
Yeah. Have 7-on-7s Thursday and Friday, and then like a normal kind of camp Saturday.
So I'll be there Thursday. I'll be there Friday. I won't be there Saturday. I think I'm going to try and catch a couple more of those camps next week. Alex, how the heck do I even get into the field? Like, I don't even know how to do this. Like, you're going to have to meet me at the Bojangles or meet me at the Waffle House. And I'm like, hey, I'm with Alex. Like, I'm going with this guy.
I'll have you covered. We'll make sure we get it worked out.
Yeah, it's kind of fun because when I started doing this job, I covered 2 basketball games. Well, for the Big Spur, but mostly for this show. And Alex showed me the ropes there, and it's so much fun hanging out with Alex. And that's kind of how this show kind of started to blossom. Like for me and Alex to be here together, and really great there. So, all right, let's talk quickly about the Paul Man. I still got to pronounce this name right. Alex, go ahead. How do you pronounce this last name? Paul Maneri. So obviously there's stuff about his age. There's stuff about him not coaching for the last 3 years. There's no doubt about his track record. Just want to get your takes after the dust has settled. It's been about 24 hours since we found out about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's when you look at what South Carolina was able to do, it's a pretty impressive hire. I mean, you kind of mentioned it. This guy's track record, like he very successful coach, and I think kind of sticking with the coaching staff here, having the ability to keep Monty Lee on staff, is just a crucial part to all this too. And that's not to take anything away from Paul Maneri, because he's going to play a huge part in doing what he can to help get South Carolina back to where they are. But I just think Monty Lee's kind of relationship with those guys, keeping them on board, but then just kind of making sure they're staying on roster. But I think this is a huge hire for South Carolina, and one that kind of, I think, caught a lot of people off guard. But when you kind of look at the national kind of take on it, it seems like South Carolina caught a lot of people's attention with this hire.
And look, it's perfect timing. I mean, what starts in just a couple of days? College World Series in Omaha. Yeah. The college baseball mecca of the entire calendar year. And I do think that you're going to have a number of people talking about this hire. Anytime you have a national championship coach going to the type program that South Carolina has been traditionally. And, Alex, I thought about this the other day. What are the blue bloods of college baseball? If South Carolina is not one of them, then I don't know what is. Obviously, you have the Michigans, the Notre Dames, you have the Southern Cows. I mean, I would call Georgia blue blood in the baseball side of things, but on the football side of things, I should say, but on the baseball side of things, I mean, there's a lot of programs that never won a national title, let alone 2. I think there's only been 15 that have won 2.
Right. Yeah. You think about just what the SEC is probably going to be able to do. Like, even you think about this region, it's going to be nothing but a SEC, ACC College World Series. Just kind of crazy. Like, the SEC is going to have 4 teams in. So, SEC is just one that is the best baseball in the country. And, making a hire like this, I think South Carolina was still right there, but I think this could help South Carolina get back to where they were.
Well, I think the interesting thing for me is, Paul I gotta pronounce his name right. I will know this by next baseball season, but Paul Maneri. Paul Maneri doesn't take this job unless he thinks that he can win at South Carolina. And I think it's in a lot of ways, it's kind of like Steve Spurrier coming back to South Carolina, or coming to South Carolina and saying, let's do something that hasn't been done. That was Spurrier, but we all know what South Carolina baseball is capable of. And to have a pitching coach, I don't know who's going to be the associate head coach. It's probably going to be Monty, but have a pitching coach that's also an excellent recruiter. I think that this state and the Southeast and nationally, South Carolina is going to be right back to recruiting top 5, top 10 classes year in and year out. And you don't take this job unless you think you can win. And that's what's going to happen, I think. And
in this day and age with the transfer portal, like I'm not trying to say that South Carolina was like not where they should be this year. Like they weren't, but even now, even with the transfer portal, you can get guys in. Like look at a team like LSU last year, like kind of got some key transfer portal guys in and it just took off. So, transfer portal will be key for South Carolina. I know we're probably getting into that a little bit too here, but, even with the transfer portal in these days, you can, take a huge step forward from one year to the next.
And I think that especially in baseball, and look, I'll say this right now. I think baseball, even more than football, even more than basketball, South Carolina fans pay attention. And there might be almost like a Chicken Little mentality sometimes with South Carolina football. Probably with South Carolina basketball as well. But with baseball, people care and they understand what's happening in NIL. They're watching these teams just buy players and say, well, I want South Carolina to be great again. And I think in some ways it might be more attainable for South Carolina to be great in the NIL era in baseball. What are your thoughts on that? You don't need that much more money.
Right. Yeah. I think you're kind of hit the nail on the head with that one. Like, I think South Carolina can definitely put itself in position in the NIL world in baseball and just use that and kind of the recruiting that they have in state with some of these guys to be able to take a huge step forward. And I think they'll be in a good position there.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard Mike Morgan saying this today on Inside the Gamecocks, and it might have been Mike. It might have been their guest. I'm blanking on his name right now, but he is a LSU guy who knows in and outs of the LSU program, and he works for Outkick right now. So I don't want to butcher his name, so I'm not going to say it like I can't say the Carolina coach's name tonight. But however, he did say that nowadays it's not about who has the best facilities; it's about who can pay me the most money, and we're seeing that across all sports. And I know that when Mark Kingston was relieved of his duties at South Carolina, it turned into a situation where people were willing to pony up for NIL. So if you're somebody that wants to be a part of Garnet Trust, if you want to be included in this NIL stuff and baseball is your sport, now is the time to do it, because baseball is probably the sport that can make the most difference year in and year out, just from a budget standpoint, scholarship standpoint, and all of that. So excited about that. I do see that we have some comments in here. Brendan says it doesn't feel real, LFG. I agree. It seems very weird that Gamecocks are able to pluck a national championship coach, multiple trips to Omaha, multiple SEC champion, multiple time SEC tournament champion. And I don't think the Gamecocks could have found a better hire in this situation, in this climate in college baseball. Will C says, ready to hear about the portal. I think that the portal is about to heat up. I don't remember what Whittle said today, Alex. Maybe you do, but they have until June 12th to.
Sounds right. I think not 100% sure on that, but
I think it's so. Not June 12th. I think it's July 2nd or July 12th, something like that, for baseball players to enter the portal. So I remember talking about this back in June, July, August about baseball. Yeah, Phil says it's July 2nd. So July 2nd is the last time for players to enter the portal. So it's going to heat up here fast. And I think as soon as Omaha finishes, the draft finishes, you're going to see a lot of stuff when it comes to the portal. And as John Whittle said last night on this very show, Gamecocks need to be active all over, from a pitching standpoint to position player standpoint, center field, shortstop, second base, catcher. Right. And so I think the Gamecocks will find a way to, they have to find a way to get some stuff done. So Jay Diz says pulling a coach like Maneri shows everybody was serious about winning, especially keeping money, and pulling away the best recruiter from LSU is baller. Absolutely. Zachary Stokes, I don't know who reached out to who first. I think that Ray Tanner's had conversations with about everybody in the country. I don't know if he's slept lately, and to find a guy that might have mutual interest or vice versa, doesn't matter how it happened, just happened.
Right. And I'm sure we'll probably, in that introductory press conference, I'm sure that will probably be addressed.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know Alex Jones will be there asking that question. Alex isn't the best in the business for nothing. No, but I think that you'll have a whole lot of questions answered to the, what people can and can't say, and to be respectful to other people as well, because you never know who was offered this job, who was not offered this job. And you never know if this was just the plan the entire time, and Ray had to spend a week convincing Paul to come coach the University of South Carolina. And look, that's kind of what happened with Spurrier. Spurrier needed some convincing, but it wasn't really South Carolina convincing him. It was his wife convincing him to go dance again at South Carolina. Moving on from baseball, we'll talk about this all off season. We have plenty of time to dig into all of this. The press conference. Well, I don't know, Alex, do we know of a press conference time yet?
I don't think a date is set, but I wouldn't be surprised by the end of the week, but I don't think a date is set yet.
Yeah, so there'll be a lot of stuff, and we'll get to it next week, and we'll break down every little morsel that was said in the coaching search and give you everything and try and fill in the gaps and all the questions that you have. But it was not just baseball coach that was hired today, but you also have softball. Ashley Chastain took over the softball program, former Gamecock. And everything that I've heard about her and from folks I've talked to, said this is potentially a home run. It's a former Gamecock, heck of a recruiter, players coach. The players love them. I know that Ray Tanner was in the building or in the stadium when South Carolina went up to Charlotte and lost 9-1 last year. And she's turned down multiple other SEC head coaching jobs. And I think that one of the coolest things that I've heard recently, and I didn't know this, I didn't pay attention that much to softball, slapped me on the wrist there, but she actually hired an Ole Miss hitting coach, paid assistant at Ole Miss to come to UNC Charlotte. So you know that she has some chops there. So Alex, what's your take on softball right now?
Yeah, I think this is another one of those big time hires, because you just look at what she did at Charlotte, like winning conference championships, and just has a track record of success there. As you and I kind of both know, the SEC in softball is just like, you think it's really good in baseball, it's really, really good in softball. And now you're adding Oklahoma, who's winning, I think, like 2 or 3 straight national championships to the mix. 4 straight national championships to the mix. So, I think there's going to be a little bit of building to do probably, but, I think she is a perfect fit because, as you mentioned, went to South Carolina, so she's going to want to see the program get to where get to the top of the country.
Yeah, it's tough because I know that Beverly had some success at South Carolina. She got to some regionals, but after, it's very similar to Mark Kingston. You're in a job for 7+ years. I think it was 11 years with Bev, and where's the long-term trajectory? Mm-hmm. There's not many coaches in college sports that get to 7, 8, 9, 10+ seasons without some hardware to show. And I think that's kind of where both softball, baseball, and golf are at right now. And with golf, we do have a new golf coach, and that is Rob Bradley from Purdue. He was there for 11 years. So, take out everything I just said about 11 years at a school, but, it's one of those things where he's coming to South Carolina for a start. I think it's pretty difficult to play golf consistently up in Purdue. Up in Indiana, it's cold, a lot more than it's cold in South Carolina. And I know that he has a lot of accolades behind his name. I believe he's had multiple NCAA tournament teams, top teams, top finishers, and done well in, I guess, what we call the big. But that's really all I got on him. I don't know, Alex, you got any more?
Yeah, that's about all I had to on him. Like, and when you just look at these 3 hires that were made today, like, on paper, just really, really solid hires, really, really good hires by Ray Tanner in South Carolina.
And it's not to take away from the new equestrian coach, who is a national champion coach as well. And look, I remember when I was in school, South Carolina was winning national championships in equestrian. Mm-hmm. And it's another thing. There are a lot of girls that grow up, and boys as well, but especially girls that grow up riding horses in South Carolina and being, I had a good friend who was a horse girl, and she was all about horses. And there's no reason that South Carolina cannot be successful in equestrian again, especially when what you have in Camden and that facility. And when you start thinking about, the race that happens every single year. So 4 big time hires for South Carolina. And I know that in this time of year, postseason is what everyone's thinking about, regional, super regional. And I don't think South Carolina is that far away in any of the sports, but especially equestrian, softball. You can recruit, you can get some kids that are talented, and good luck with Oklahoma. But the rest of the country, we'll see what happens. And then golf, there's a lot of good golfers in this state and the surrounding area, and we're not that far away from Augusta National, and then equestrian as well. So, Alex, real quick, do you have a team you're pulling for, or a favorite right now in the College World Series? I know we touched on it last night, but we have a new team in the mix.
Right. The number 1 seed just really hasn't. I think it's been a while since they've won, but I feel like it's going to be hard to count Tennessee out in this year. They're just in every phase really, really good. So I think they're probably going to be the favorite coming in. But a team like Florida right now, you think was probably the last team in, or one of the last teams into the tournament, and they're just as hot as anybody in this tournament. And they got guys like Jack Caglione, who's one of the best players in the country, can do it pitching and hitting. So, and really that roster all season was loaded, just as he had put it together. So I think that Florida may be the team to watch in this World Series.
Yeah. like selfishly, I want the SEC to win, but I also understand what that presents to South Carolina in a lot of ways in recruiting.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't really help, but I will give a shout out. My wife is a 2-time graduate, or soon to be 2-time graduate of Florida State University. So spent a lot of time in Tallahassee. I'm pulling for the Seminoles. I don't know what
Okay.
that means for,
Okay.
SEC, ACC. ACC hasn't won it in a while. Florida State hasn't won it in a while, but I'll be pulling for those Seminoles because you know what they say, happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
But so real quick, Alex, and I shouldn't say real quick, we're going to hit this for about 10 minutes, but I said earlier, we're going to talk about football recruiting. And look, that's your bread and butter. You know this stuff inside and out. I wanted to take a quick look at the current recruiting class and just get your take on each player, because the groundwork has been laid right now for what South Carolina needs to do to fill in gaps. So if you want to go ahead and take this away, I'm just going to sit back and listen.
Yeah. So right now, South Carolina's sitting at 9 commits in this class. Kind of your headliner guy right now is Shamari Earls, a guy who committed, a cornerback, 6'2", 180, who committed during the spring game. Top, I think 80 guy in the country right now, 4-star guy. And he's a guy who I think he's coming in that last weekend and seems pretty solidly committed. And just when you watch him on film, a guy who kind of just does it all in the secondary, and guy who they're pretty excited about. Excuse me. Moving down to Caleb Williams, another guy, D-line, kind of a note on him. He actually took an official visit to Virginia Tech this past weekend, so it could be something to watch there. But he and Shamari Earls, kind of South Carolina's 2 top guys right now, committed on that Saturday of that spring game. So, just a D-line's kind of position right now, you think when you look forward in this class, you think is probably a position they need to recruit pretty well, because you think of the guys on the current roster who could be gone, Tonka Hemingway, Sanders, and, Alex Huntley, DeAndre Jules. Those guys, probably going to be gone, and some of them are will be gone. So, they're going to need to load up on some defensive linemen in this class. Continuing on in the commit list, you got Brian Rowe, who's a guy who was in this past weekend. Probably, a lot of these guys with commitments, when they take OVs, just kind of strengthens their commitment, and wouldn't be surprised if that happened here in this class. A guy, he's actually kind of, when they first signed him, I think he was like a 3-star and rated maybe like an 88, but he's gone to a few camps and it's really impressed some people and continues to climb the rankings. So it'd be interesting to watch where he ends up kind of in this class and kind of in the rankings. Jaden Sellers, a guy he was their first commit, another wide receiver. He was the first commit. I think it was like in October of last year. If that last name sounds familiar, that is Lenora Sellers' brother. So he'll be suiting up here at South Florence as a senior this year. So he'll be a name to watch here to see how he kind of progresses to that senior year. And moving on down, Jaquel Hallman, who's a guy who kind of just committed he was that first commit, first welcome home of the weekend. And, he's a guy who I know we've mentioned this last week on the show. He was someone who came to camp. We kind of had an eye on this guy who they could offer, and he really shined during that camp and had an impressive performance. And ran like a 4.43 40, and then kind of shined in those one-on-one segments of camp. And as a guy ultimately that got an offer, and I think he was in town on Saturday for the official visit. He wasn't an official visitor, but he was in town and ended up committing to the staff. And just kind of some extra notes on him. I talked to him on Sunday, and he had an official visit to Liberty scheduled, but that won't be happening. I think it was for like 2 weekends now, but that won't be happening. According to him, I think he's going to shut it down. So he's a guy, and he's another guy who I think could continue rising in this class. So kind of moving on here, we got Kobe Saki-Pra, who was a guy who in town over the weekend, and he's a guy out of Roswell, Georgia, who, I think he's one. He kind of, when you look at his film, he's kind of that perfect that edge guy. Somebody on our board said he kind of compared him to Brian Thomas Jr. size-wise, and I thought that was a really good comparison. I can see that. Anthony Addison, a guy who I was an early commit to, April 12th, he committed. And actually seeing him, he's been at like almost every camp that I've been to now, just hanging out with the coaching staff. So he seems really locked in. DeMarcus Leach, safety, he'll be in for an official visit June 21st, but another guy who's 6'2", 180 safety, kind of that guy that when you think about safety, South Carolina recruits, and Torian Gray, that just kind of that prototypical size, he fits into that bill. And then kind of lastly, a guy who just committed today, actually, Christopher Hatfield, 6'3", 205, has got really good size. When you look at him I was I think they originally liked him at safety and still do like him at safety, but I think they see some corner capabilities or ability in him. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how he progresses senior year. And then when he gets to Carolina, ultimately, where does he fit in the secondary? But that's all 9 commits right now, and that's the rundown. And what you got? Any questions or anything?
Yeah. So, looking at that, I think that secondary, obviously, there's a couple positions on the football field. I think you have to kind of stack talent. And I think that's offensive line. I think it's wide receiver. I think it's quarterback. And then it's secondary and defensive line. And, everybody wants the great offensive tackles, but they're hard to find. And South Carolina's in a good position there. Everybody wants the best quarterback. Lenore Sellers seems to have that kind of makeup to him. And then, stacking wide receiver safeties. I mean, look, you got 1, 2, 3 defensive ends already in this class. And that does not mean the Gamecocks are not going to continue to pursue, some of these 4 and 5-star defensive ends, defensive tackles. I think that most people that follow Gamecock recruiting right now are probably wondering what's happening at defensive tackle. Where do the Gamecocks stand there? Because the Gamecocks have gotten into a world of hurt of the past couple of years in the recruiting cycles, and Georgia kind of poaching all of those guys. But, what are your thoughts right now on how big this class can be? And, that where do the Gamecock fans need to be looking at for commitments coming up? And not saying player, but position. I've looked at this for a little bit now, and over the past couple of years, it's always been, somewhere in the range of 21, 25, 26 commitments in a class. You go back to 2007, 2008, 2009. Sometimes there were like 30 man classes, and the SEC decided like, hey, nope, we're limiting that kind of crap. You can't do that anymore. Yeah. But there's no limits on recruiting class size anymore. It's just 85 scholarships, and we'll see if that changes over time. But how big do you think this class can get?
Yeah, I think kind of in that range you mentioned is what we're going to see. If kind of going to your question about position wise, like I kind of touched on this a minute ago, but I think defensive line, kind of especially that interior defensive line, is a group that they're really going to kind of hammer and recruit hard because it had a couple of guys in this weekend that fit that bill because they're just losing some guys in that defensive line. You kind of look at secondary too. You could see a few guys on this current roster who if DQ Smith and Nick Worry have a big year, like maybe they go to the NFL draft. So you're going to have to kind of fit those guys or recruit for some of those guys into that secondary. And we're kind of seeing that so far.
Yeah. I mean, looking at it last year, I think that the Gamecocks lost 22 or 27 transfers and they brought in 22 or 27. So whatever, plus or minus 5 or 6. Yeah. Right now, the Gamecocks have 84 players on scholarship. Last time I checked it, it looks like there are 27 seniors on the roster, maybe 26, 27 scholarship guys that are going to be moving on. Like this is, and look, I hate it for the players in some respects, but I'm really happy for what we have to do. We don't have to look at COVID years and, that type of thing anymore. It's just going to be traditional red shirts, 5 years or 4 years to play 5 or 5 years to play 4, whatever it is. We don't have to worry about the 6th, 7th, 8th year guys and if they have eligibility or not. So, looking at that, if that holds true, Gamecocks could essentially have a 27-man class. But does that make sense right now with the transfer portal? And do you want to get guys from high school or do you want to have a mix of 50-50? And I think that's a question that the coaching staff's going to have to answer for themselves. And I'd love to hear your take on it, Alex. I mean, you're not a coach, but you're around it.
Right. Yeah. And I think as far as the numbers wise, there's a lot of factors that will factor into that. You just think about, who can they get in the class? Who can they feel good that they're going to get? And then when you kind of let the season play out and you see like, all right, who do we think we legitimately can get back on the roster next year? And who do we think we're going to lose? And if it's a spot where they think, okay, we need to go get an older guy for a position, like if, let's say, just for instance, Nick Worry goes pro and they say, okay, we have some guys, but let's see if we can go find an older guy to fill that roster. So I think right now it's probably flexible. Like you're just going to see, obviously, high school guys right now. But I think as the season goes on and as, we see kind of what next year's roster could look like, that's when we'll kind of have a clearer picture as to what the balance will be of high school recruits to portal prospects.
Yeah, and Alex, I think that I've said this for a while, and I see Jackson down here asking if we go after a cute quarterback or South Carolina goes after a quarterback. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you have Lenore Sellers and he can't go pro for at least, this year plus next year, hypothetically, that'd be 3 years removed from high school. I think it's going to be hard to get a quarterback that's going to want to come and, potentially sit behind Lenore's. But at the same time, Robbie Ashford has another year of eligibility. Dante Reno is still going to be a freshman this year. They're probably going to try and hope to redshirt him. You have the, I think he's a walk-on transfer from Oklahoma. He might actually be ahead of Dante right now just to preserve that red shirt. I've thought for a while that with Landon Duckworth committed in 2026, look, do not hear me say that I think there's anything wrong with Landon Duckworth coming to South Carolina or he might decommit. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying 2026 is a long way away.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to find some type of depth piece or something. Now, if that comes from the high school ranks, I think I would be surprised. I think it would be more of a developmental player that comes from high school. Right. I think that it might be what the Gamecocks tried to do this past offseason and find a quarterback that maybe has some starting experience, probably beat out, looking to transfer, looking for a fresh shot. And maybe they go look for a sophomore or a freshman who can understand there's some more development there. So I would be, and look, this is just me talking. I don't have this from Shane Beamer's coaching office. No one's told me this. But I think that you're probably going to see the Gamecocks see if they can find a developmental kid that they can redshirt out of the recruiting ranks, or they're going to look at the portal and see. But they're going to take one. There's going to be a new quarterback on the roster from recruiting or the transfer portal. That's my take on it. Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I was going to say I completely agree. I think it kind of goes back to what I said, like just going to see how the season goes. But, and really it's still kind of early in this recruiting cycle. You don't know who's going to pop up on the quarterback side of things, who Dow Loggins kind of just watches and sees that he likes and goes after him. So you can't rule out that some guy pops up and they get him. But I could definitely see a developmental type of guy to kind of help with the depth on the quarterback side of things.
Well, it's so hard. Just think about it from this standpoint, Alex, and we're going to have to take a break here in a second. But this is June 11th. And now people are upset because there aren't 20 kids committed. There's still camps. Me and Alex are going to camps Thursday and Friday. Alex has already been to like 10 of them. He's going to go to like 15 more. Like, this is the evaluation period. Right. And especially when you think about like the quarterback position, let's just talk about that for a second. But the quarterback position, how many of these kids are going to camps right now with their team to say, hey, you were the junior last year, senior quarterback is no longer here. This is your team now. Let's see what you got. And no one's laid eyes on them. Same thing at wide receiver. Like, that's why like this accelerated process is almost not fair. Number one, to the coaches, because now you have to make judgment calls on where a kid is going to be in really 4 years, maybe 5 years when you're doing your evaluation right now. But on top of that, it's not fair to the kids because like that's why I think the whole transfer, and I can be on this for 2 hours. I could talk about this for a long time, but why is Howell, the running back from South Carolina State, coming to South Carolina right now? Because he wasn't evaluated. He just wasn't. Because he might, I don't know his whole story. I don't know how long he was a starter there, but at his high school, but it's so important this time of year.
Yeah. And I think you made a good point about how, we're still in the middle of camp season. When you think back to this camp season already, think of a guy like Quell Holman. Like, everybody kind of knew about him, but it was just like, can he do enough to get the offer? He got the offer, and look, and now he's already in the class. Think back to last cycle, a guy like Fred Johnson, camp to camp, got an offer, and look how highly rated he ended up being, a 4-star guy, in Virginia, 4-star linebacker guy. So there's still going to be names that pop up in this recruiting cycle that you may just not even know right now, but they'll pop up. The South Carolina, or really any team. I mean, it's not just South Carolina's recruiting, but they'll pop up and they'll end up being big names at the end of this cycle.
Pharaoh Cooper.
Yeah.
Debo Samuel. Debo Samuel. He wasn't a guy that anybody knew about until he went to the Shrine Bowl and he had no offers. So Anyway, that's enough of my soapbox for the moment. We'll have plenty of time this summer to talk about all my different opinions, whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent. But let's go ahead and we're going to hit a sponsor break in a second. But we do have some official visits that are coming up this weekend. We've had some no official visits this weekend, Alex?
Yeah, like as of right now, there's none for this upcoming weekend.
So in 2 weeks, we'll have official visits again.
Correct. Yeah, I think.
Okay.
Let me make sure of that and make sure I'm right on that. But they had these two. I think these past 2 weekends they had about 12 guys or so. Then they'll, had the May 31st weekend, June 7th weekend, and right now next coming up is that June 21st weekend. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that means that we don't have any official visits this weekend. That's probably a good thing. There's going to be a lot of camp. That's probably why. That's what Alex will be doing. But we're going to talk a little about all the official visits that we've had so far. And Alex, we'll just run down the guys that have been on campus, where you think the Gamecocks stand in that regard. And then obviously we got some questions about some welcome homes that are lingering. And I will let you ruin the commitment for all of these players. Don't make me do it. You can do it. I'm joking. We're not going to do that. But with that being said, let's take a break and we'll be right back.
I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Emergencies and accidents happen. When you're in the middle of a fire or water event, all you want is for things to return to normal as soon as possible. Resto Pros of the Midlands is with you. RestoProsMidlandsSC.com. Open 24/7 when you need them. Quality that is guaranteed.
Down here in the South, we don't always see eye to eye. While our taste in college football teams, or what sauce, if any, goes best on a rack of ribs, or what to mix with our Dixie vodka might be up for debate, we can all agree there's nothing better than a Southern tailgate. And like our favorite college teams, our ingredients come from small towns and big cities. They're grown in Southern soil, are crafted by Southern hands, and proudly represent the South in our backyard and beyond. So raise a glass of Dixie Southern Vodka to celebrate being made in America and raised in the South.
Oh, man, the building is on fire.
During and after natural disasters or accidents, there can be a heavy loss to property. Resto Pros of the Midlands is here to help. Open 24/7. Call them when you need them. 803-493-0170. RestoProsMidlandsSC.com. Quality that is guaranteed.
Welcome back to the Late Night Gamecock Show. I am Matt Anderson, and as always, we have Alex Jones here with us. Catching up on some of Chat Row right now. Preston, appreciate you being here. Preston says, happy to stumble upon this podcast. Hey, man, every Tuesday, 9 p.m., we're here. Love to have you. Tell your friends, and we're still going to talk Gamecocks all the time, and you can reach out to us whenever you'd like to. And then Zachary Stokes says, Matt needs to go on a what really grinds my gears rant. In fact, we don't have enough time in the day. There's so much that grinds my gears right now about college athletics, but we got the summertime and we really haven't even gotten to the schedule stuff that was released today. We got so much time to talk about everything. And I mean, Alex could probably spend 24 hours a day just doing a live stream podcast, just telling you everything that's happening.
Yeah.
But so
even from this weekend, yeah,
you don't have any time this weekend. But and look, I should have realized with me and Alex working camps this weekend that there was no official visits. That was on me. I apologize. Everything is like, it's so crazy. I mean, so many texts I've gotten about baseball coach and what the future held on the baseball side of things, and these official visits and who the welcome homes are. I just assumed that official visits would happen forever and forever and ever and ever. But that's not the case. So anyway, Alex, we have had a number of official visitors that have come to South Carolina recently. I think that the first big one that came through when you look at the rankings was David Sanders. Don't know where things stand with the massive number 2 ranked overall player in the country, offensive tackle from up in North Carolina, I think the Charlotte area. Do you think the Gamecocks have long-term staying power there?
Yeah, I think they do. It's just, kind of have to see where they stand kind of going into the season and all that. I think when you think of David Sanders, you think of teams like Tennessee and Clemson. You really can't ever count on Georgia these days for any recruit. But, I think they have some staying power there, and we'll just have to kind of watch that process.
So after that, then the next big official visit weekend, I'm going to let you go through this, Alex. You've been covering this nonstop. So if you want to just pull it up real quick, take your time, no rush, but just run through where you think the Gamecocks stand, pushing, not pushing, long-term staying power, all of those sorts of things. Because I always say the summertime is when the recruiting board comes to like a dartboard, and you might have, the outer edges of the dartboard. And then like you see who the Gamecocks zero in with who they brought in for official visits, and then who comes for unofficial visits during the season for games. So Alex, if you want to take us away, man, I'm all ears.
Yeah. So let's start with that May 31st weekend, 2 weekends ago. Think of a guy like Jared Smith, who's kind of the headliner guy who was in that weekend, edge out of Thompson, Alabama. Another guy who you think about with Sterling Lucas that he's had them in. Sterling Lucas had him with a bunch of elite recruits, and he's just another guy that they have that he's got him in with. It's going to be obviously being a 5-star guy. There's going to be a lot of schools who want to come after him, and he's going to have pretty much anywhere he wants to go. But I think the Gamecocks have some staying power there. Jalen Gilchrist is a guy who I know has got some South Carolina crystal balls, and I think they seem to be in a pretty good spot there. Virginia is a state that South Carolina's recruited really well. Obviously, when you think about the ties that Beamer has in that state, it seems like they're in a pretty good spot with him. Kind of continuing on, you think about a guy like, let's see, Malik Clark, a wide receiver out of Rock Hill. I think that one right now is kind of down to South Carolina. Maybe you can't, or NC State's going to be in there too because they get that last official visit. But you think of him it's probably a South Carolina, North Carolina State, North Carolina battle for him. But, I think Mike Furry's done a pretty good job building a relationship with him. And so I think they're right there in that one too. Tayshawn Alston's a guy, he was at Rutgers this past weekend, but seems like that one may be kind of coming down to a South Carolina, North Carolina battle for, another North Carolina prospect. When you think about South Carolina recruiting, like North Carolina really hasn't been a state here, these recent cycles that they've gotten into, which is kind of weird when you think about how they kind of just skipped that state, but are doing really well in the DMV, Virginia, and all that area. But let's see, kind of moving down here. Jaden Breaker, a guy who was in that May 31st weekend. I think they're in a decent spot with him. Just going to have to see where he kind of goes throughout the season. AJ Brand's an interesting one, right down the road in Irmo. The key with him is just what position does he want to play in college? He's a quarterback at Irmo and, really good quarterback. But, South Carolina kind of likes him as that defensive back athlete, kind of anywhere in that secondary. He actually just had a commit date, and I'm blanking on the date that he released just a little while ago. I think maybe the 23rd. I could be wrong on that. I have an article up on the site about it, but so and of course I'm blanking about what the date was. But with him, it's just what position does he want to play? He's coming off a Virginia Tech official visit, so kind of need to do some some checking to see where South Carolina is with that one. Isaac Sowles Jr. was a guy who, I think South Carolina's been on for a long time, and I think they're right there. I know Hale has said before that he thinks that NC State may be the primary competition there, and I think that may be the case. He's got a commit date coming up too, so could be another one of these offensive linemen that South Carolina gets in.
Yeah, and those guys you're talking about there were a handful of 4-star guys, a handful of 3-star guys. And look, South Carolina's gonna I'm gonna go and tell you right now, everyone understand this. There's gonna be an unranked player that South Carolina brings in for an official visit. The sky is not falling. Like, South Carolina is bringing that player in for a reason, and pay attention to that. And this is my rant from earlier, but there are a lot of players that if you're a good coaching staff, you've done your evaluation on, and just because they don't have offers from the Southern Cals, the Michigans, the Georgias, the Floridas, the Tennessees, the pick your favorite school that recruits well. I don't care. These guys can play. There's a reason they're coming in for an official visit. South Carolina only gets X amount of official visits they can give out per year, I believe. That rule might have changed. I know kids can now take unlimited official visits, it seems like. But when South Carolina brings in a kid for an official visit, just pay attention. Nobody was paying attention to David Bushey, who came in at camp last year, knocked people's heads off, and then the coaching staff said, all right, like, we can't let him leave camp. And that's what happened. And if you go back and look at last year's recruiting class, scroll all the way down to the bottom, you're going to find David Bushey. And he's somebody that, look, he might be a special teams guy. I don't know. But at the end of the day, special teams is really important. Everyone knows that from Pete Limbo's time at South Carolina. And obviously the new special teams coach cares about that. So, but just don't doubt that. DJ Swearinger was a 3-star for a long time. I think he was a 4-star at the end. Anybody mad about DJ Swearinger coming to South Carolina? I don't think so. But at the time, people were like, why are we taking this 3-star? So just pay attention to all this. And look, you know, the Breaker kid is a great example of a kid that I don't know why he's a 3-star. I don't. I think that he has 4-star tape. But, you know, I don't do the evaluations.
Yeah, you look at a guy like Chris Hatfield who committed today. You know, I think when he came in, I'm not sure right now if he has a composite ranking, but I think he didn't have that 24/7 Sports composite ranking, but just a 24/7 Sports ranking. But, you know, when you kind of look at his film, like, you're like, man, that guy can play and kind of fits that kind of, like we talked about earlier, that mold of what Torian Gray looks for in a guy in the secondary. So, you know, there's going to be guys like that in this class. And, you know, we've seen guys like that, as you mentioned, kind of explode once they get on campus.
Oh yeah. And so we'll next week we'll talk about the official visitors from this past week. Because look, we literally, when a kid comes off an official visit, it's probably the hardest time to talk to a player. And Alex, like, you can tell me that. I bet you agree with that. But I mean, that's when all the warm and fuzzies are there. You kind of need 5 days to wear off, let them go on their next official visit, see where they are. Alex is not going to stop interviewing these kids. He's going to be talking to them. He's going to be reading all their interviews from other programs and see, you know, how the official visits went. But Alex, before we get out of here, how many welcome homes are South Carolina waiting on right now?
All right. So this weekend, this weekend they had 6 commitments and 3 have announced. That was Quell Holman. He was number 1 on Saturday. Kobe Saki-Prow on Monday, and Chris Hatfield today, who announced. So right now they're sitting on 3 unannounced.
Okay, so 3 unannounced. Just get ready, get your popcorn out. There's one that's going to surprise you in a really, really good way. And, you know, with those types of players that kind of come out of nowhere, like, look, no one's going to be expecting this one. I don't think. I mean, I don't want to say too much, but no one's going to be expecting this one. There are 2 more that are really exciting prospects as well. But there's going to be one headliner out of this group that people in the message boards are going to care about. People at the water cooler at work the next day are going to be talking about. But, you know, really excited for these kids and this opportunity for them to come play for the University of South Carolina and, you know, achieve their dreams. They're getting a college education. It's ridiculously awesome. And can't wait. Hey, Hale, do you have a time frame for when these welcome homes might be announced officially?
I'm not sure exactly, because it's really hard with these time frames, because, you know, you're not sure what they're waiting on. But I mean, you could hear a couple of them from at the end of this week, or it's going to be, you know, I think it's going to be maybe a couple who wait. It's just really hard to tell when these guys would do it. But, you know, sometimes they surprise us and they'll do it quickly. You never know.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, I'll talk to Alex, I'll talk to some people connected to the program, and they'll say, "Oh wow, like, you won't believe who just committed." And then it's like, gotta get the edit, gotta get the picture for Instagram, gotta do all those types of things. But South Carolina is cooking right now in recruiting, and they're laying the groundwork for a really, really good recruiting class. So really, really, really excited for what the future holds. Yeah. Sorry. We have a little private chat here and it kind of cracked me up there. But anyway, big week coming up. I know that Alex and I will be there, and Alex is going to show me the ropes, but we'll see some kids. We'll tell you the kids that look good. We'll tell you the kids to, potentially be excited about that might not have any stars by their name right now. But Alex, anything before we get out of here tonight?
Yeah, we talked about how it was a crazy weekend, this past weekend. I think South Carolina's starting to get some momentum on the recruiting trail in this 2025 class. And you never know when anybody else is going to pop. And, it seems like a welcome home from Shane Beamer's coming just about every day. So just stick around the Big Spur and here on the show, and we'll give you all the latest.
Yeah, and we'll be back here Tuesday, 9 p.m. Unless there's another coaching hire. And if there's another coaching hire, me and Alex will be back here tomorrow night. Hopefully all the coaches in South Carolina are safe right now. But, like as was said on the show today by Jamie Bradford, if Ray Tanner is calling you on your cell phone today, you might be kind of worried if you're a head coach of South Carolina, but you might not want to answer that one. But anyway, really excited for the trajectory of the program. I think that all 4 hires are fantastic ones. And look, however you digest this podcast, this show, whether you watch this on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you're listening to it on podcast form when you're walking the dogs, going for your run, or just driving on your commute, you're giving us the most valuable thing you have, which is your time. And that's never underappreciated. It's always valued. And we thank you so much for that. But with that being said, that's all we have tonight. Alex, thank you. Phil, the best producer in the world. We appreciate you sticking around with us tonight. I know you've been a busy guy here lately. And with all that being said, we thank you. And we'll catch you on Tuesday at 9 p.m. Hope you guys all have a great evening. Bye, everybody.